Hello and welcome back to another episode of Alignment Academy. It's your host, Kristen. And if you're new here, welcome. It's not on accident that you landed here. I am a corporate dropout turned spiritual mentor. And I am really passionate about helping people follow their soul's purpose, heal all of their self-doubt, their limiting beliefs, so that they can actually create a life that they love, that they identify with, all that good stuff. So yeah, if you landed here, you're in the right place. And I'm super excited today because you guys know I don't bring a ton of guests on. It is reserved for people that really inspire me and that I want to get to know and learn more from. And today I brought on my friend Mike, and he owns a company called Superfood Superhuman. And yeah, welcome Mike to Alignment Academy.
Thanks so much for having me, Kristen. I don't even remember how the universe connected us, but I'm so glad that it did. And I also want to say congratulations for having this podcast and your consistency with it. And also congratulations for saying superfood superhuman correctly, because most people mess that up somehow, even though it seems pretty simple. Really? But I was like superhuman superfoods. So you nailed it.
So tell everyone who you are, what you do, and I would love to just have a quick recap of like how you got on this path.
Yeah, it's always a good question. Well, my name is Mike Schmidt. I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and I moved out to San Diego in August of 2019 after I did a golf trip in January of 2019. And I basically was just waiting for my lease to end. But I had made that decision in my soul and my heart that like San Diego was just calling me. I went to Santa Monica a few months prior. And then when I came to San Diego, it was just like literally like felt it in my heart, in my soul. And I was like, I need to live here. And it was cool because I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lewis Howes, but he posted a quote the other day. And it was like, I love the theory about how like a city has your destiny and has like your soul print and it's calling you, and you just have to let the universe take you to its path. And I really do feel like I'm meant to live here in San Diego. Yeah, I grew up as an athlete playing basketball, lacrosse, baseball. Kind of always had that like burn it off mentality where I feel like I could just eat whatever I wanted. Wouldn't matter. But I really was kind of skinny fat, where I was like my metabolism was, still humming and it was fine. So like I didn't like gain weight, but the metabolic damage and the inflammation I was putting on my body was not ideal. But I didn't realize that until I kind of like connected the dots when I suffered from chronic acne for like 10 years. And then essentially I started getting into calisthenics, and then I injured my shoulder because I kind of became enthralled and obsessed with those workouts, which was great. But it was a big silver lining because that led me to the human body. And then I started to kind of like, start to eat a little better, started shopping at Whole Foods. And then I realized like all the best foods were coming from California. Like every label I would look at was like, oh, like California. And I just kind of heard it was sort of the mecca for everything. And then, when I did that golf trip, I was just like, I feel like all the stars are aligning. Like this feels like it makes a lot of sense. So I moved out here about 6 months before the pandemic happened. And then we started working from home once the pandemic hit. And then I got introduced to a nutrition course. And within like literally 4 weeks of enrolling that course, like I totally eradicated my 10 years of chronic acne, chronic hemorrhoids.
Wow.
That was like an awakening in itself. I was like, whoa, like I was going from dermatologist to dermatologist, and all they would ever say is drink more water, have more fiber. And yeah, it got so bad. I mean, obviously it was like a physical impediment, but it was a huge hit on my mental health and my self-esteem. And so I was just like, how come I struggled for a decade? And then within 4 weeks, I healed it. So then I just felt called and obligated to share with other people, and then started an Instagram page. And here we are 4 years later.
Here we are, right? We just landed here.
Yeah.
No work at all. Okay, I actually want to go back to a lot of points in your journey, because the truth is you had a lot of pivotal moments, right? It sounded like the San Diego move was huge. The moment where you enrolled in a nutrition coaching certification was huge. But the truth is that behind the scenes, those moments are soul points, right? And a lot of times people have those little inklings, but they don't actually do anything about it. And you seem really in touch with your intuition and really in touch with your heart, but I'm guessing that you haven't always been like this, or have you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like there was like always something wrong with me, honestly, growing up. Like I just felt like I was like super awkward, or like I just had really low self-esteem. I was always like less than, and I didn't really know how to like manage my emotions or handle my emotions. I think I would just kind of like avoid and isolate. But at the time, you know, that was my nervous system just kind of like taking over and my subconscious doing its thing. But now that I look back at it, especially like, you know, I mean, like obviously college, like a lot of people are drinking their faces off. And I mean, I was one of those dudes. Like I was like your typical frat star, like blacking out like 2 or 3 times a week, and I didn't realize that was me obviously just like numbing out my emotions. And you know, at the time you look at it as like, this is just what kids do, like we're just having fun, and you know, it's fine, it's all part of my process, I don't regret any of it. But it's just kind of crazy how we sort of self-sabotage unconsciously without realizing it. But even like when I hit the real world after college, I just realized like if you don't change your awareness level around any topic, whether it's emotional regulation or nutrition, what I've realized is that you're basically going to be walking around in a 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old body at a 4 or 5-year-old level of psychology when it comes to your emotions, or habits when it comes to nutrition. And that's why I'm just such a big proponent of awareness, because you simply cannot change what you're not aware of. And so that was the thing for me for such a long time. Like I didn't realize that having certain foods and eating conventional dairy and conventional gluten and these foods that really aren't food, honestly, they're not coming from the earth, they don't have energy in them, there's dead foods that we've been like indoctrinated into. I didn't realize like that was like causing my acne and causing inflammation. After college, I was like hitting the real world, and again, those habits never really changed, so the same coping mechanisms still came in. And so like I would come home from a long day of work when like my first year after college, like still living with my parents, and I would just like drive an hour to work, drive an hour home, on the phone all day doing like a sales job that was just kind of like sucking my soul. And I didn't, you know, last thing I wanted to do was like talk to my parents, and they're like, oh, like how you doing, how was your day, like yada yada. And I would just be like, shut up, don't talk to me. And I would go in my room and just like scroll on my phone and just like doom scroll. Yeah, I'm just now realizing that a lot of that is just a way to like avoid these emotions that we don't know how to handle, and that most of us are never taught. But that's like the biggest lesson I feel like I've learned, is that everything in this life is a skill, and it can be learned, whether it's public speaking or it's confidence or it's nutrition, it's fitness. A lot of people like look at even us like doing this podcast, like, oh, I can never do that. Like I'm not confident enough, or like I don't have the courage to like leave my corporate job. It's like, dude, you just have to like be around the people who have done it and like learn what they've done.
Yeah. Did you have a tipping point of realizing how unhappy you were and that you just needed to change your life? Because like when I look at your path, you really have, I mean, just you telling me about who you used to be, I don't see that person in front of me, right? Like it's so obvious that you've done so much work on yourself. And we're definitely going to get into that, because there's so much that I want to unpack with that. But was there a moment where you had this wake up of like, I don't like who I am, I don't like what I look like? Because the changes you've made are so dramatic that I feel like those changes only come out of a lot of contrast, you know? You don't really swing so heavily one way without having a lot of pain. I mean, my deepest spiritual awakenings have come from my deepest pain. And so if you're open to it, like, let's get real. Like, where did this come from?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking. And thank you for saying all that. I feel like one of the biggest things that a lot of us get tripped up on is like our inner critic. And that was what led me to so much burnout. So I feel like I kind of have like 2 evolution stories. The ones that are, I guess, most noticeable that have like helped me evolve the most, which was that decade-long period of chronic acne where I was just like, I feel like I'm trying everything. Like, what more can I do? Like, I'm doing what the doctor's telling me to do. I'm doing all these like protocols and remedies, but like I just can't heal. And so then once I fixed that, I was like, wow, okay, I need to like teach people, because this is so empowering. And for the longest time, I thought it wasn't possible to heal, and that I was just at a loss and there was nothing I could do. And I feel like that's what holds a lot of people back. They end up just like, the effort's not worth it. So they just throw up their hands and like, all right, screw this. So that was kind of like my initial story. But my most recent evolution story was the burnout that I went through, which has led me to the emotional intelligence, which was also another skill that I did not know that I even needed. I was doing the ice baths, I was doing sauna, I was doing breath work, I was eating well, I was sleeping well. I was like, what more could I do? Like I do the mindset stuff, I meditate, like what am I missing here? And so what I didn't realize was that I was overextending myself. I was not building boundaries. I
weren't in touch with your emotions.
Wasn't in touch with my emotions. I was doom scrolling. And so, I think that like silence is something that people are so afraid of. And I don't blame them, because most of us have these pent up emotions that just haven't been processed or registered. And a lot of us are literally from the day we're born, just like go, go, go. And we don't like actually pause and be like, okay, what's going on? And that's why I think the pandemic was such a big silver lining for so many people. So the pandemic, and then like going from my corporate job to entrepreneurship, but the two times in my life where I actually like finally had time to just like sit there and like be and exist and like allow the emotions to come through. And this is something I always say is like, you cannot heal what you cannot feel. And pain sucks. Pain really sucks, but it is one of our absolute best teachers. I think you're almost worse off like kind of like being okay, right? Like let's say you're in a corporate job and like you're making like 6 figures and making some good money, but you kind of just feel like you're a slave to your job and it's sucking out your soul. You're meant for more. And it's like, yeah, it's okay. Like I'm not really happy, but like it's fine. I can put up with it. It's like I feel like that's almost worse than like being in the muck. And
yeah, because there's no drive to change.
Exactly. And I had a mentor say to me recently, he was like, dude, like get pumped when you're in the muck, like be like stoked about that, because that is like your opportunity to just totally transform and change. And so to answer your question, long story short, I went through like a whole identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I was, on cloud 9, like, starting my business when I still had my corporate job. So I was basically doing 2 jobs at once. I was like trying to get out of a relationship that wasn't healthy for me. I was too much of anything is never a good thing, right? I was like intermittent fasting. I was sauna, ice bath, reading, like waking up early every single day. And it was just like an overload of stress on my body, not to mention the lack of ability to create boundaries. And I just had that sort of self-respect and like not realizing that the thoughts I was thinking was literally making me sick.
Joe Dispenza shit.
Exactly. Yeah, there was definitely a moment and multiple moments and days in a row, as a matter of fact, for 16 months where I was just like, what do I do? Like
I'm doing it all.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing everything I can.
Yeah.
I was just hitting my head on the wall. And I actually used to have a mirror in my room that was similar to this, like a sliding mirror. And I was working with my desk in my room. And this was when like the procrastination was hitting me and the ADHD was hitting me and the depression. I was just like literally in my own jail cell. I like was looking into the mirror every day. And because I was like so stressed out, I realized I was becoming more inflamed. And then I got this imposter syndrome because I was a health coach, like struggling with his health. And like every day I was like looking in the mirror and I was just like, I was being like so mean to myself, honestly, just like speaking terrible words and all this like self-deprecation and self-sabotage. And so it literally became to a point where I started going to therapy, and I told my therapist about that. And she was like, have you ever thought of just like taking the mirror out of your room? I was like, no, but at this point it doesn't serve me any good. So I think I'm going to do that.
Wow.
So I did that. And that was like, pretty symbolic. Obviously it was like a physical thing that I actually did, but it was like, damn, if I'm not going to like speak well to myself, then why am I going to just continue to look in this mirror and just like sabotage?
So what I hear from these big life moments too is that you actually got to the root of what was really wrong. Because, in the beginning, I'm not going to lie, I'm like, okay, you had acne, like what's the big deal? But then as you started talking, I was like thinking of the little boy inside of you. And I'm like, for a guy, I've never been a guy, but like with a girl, it's like we can cover up with makeup, we can figure some stuff out, we can do our hair, but it's like I've actually never had this conversation with a man. What is that like when you don't really like what you look like? I'm going to make a quick assumption about you if you listen to Alignment Academy, the podcast, that ever since you were little, you just had this deep feeling that you were meant for big things in this world. You weren't here to be ordinary, but you were here to be a mover and a shaker. Hi, I'm Kristen, and same. Except for years, I was self-sabotaging because even though I felt in my soul that I was here to do extremely big things, I could not stop procrastinating, self-sabotaging, feeling massive amounts of imposter syndrome, and don't forget getting triggered as fuck every single day of my life. And honestly, I didn't know what to do. And then I found inner work. I found energy healing. I found all of the modalities that I still use today. The spiritual tools that I use feel like I found a hack to this universe. Like, the rules don't apply to me because I know how to shift my vibration. I know how to reprogram my subconscious mind. I know how to give myself any beliefs that I want to believe about the world, like money comes easy to me and the rules don't apply to me and I don't need a real job. These are all just beliefs that I believe about myself. If you're similar to me, you know you have a big mission, but you know it's also time to get out of your own way and heal your blocks for good so you can actually just take action on your mission. This is why I created Alignment Academy, the membership. Inside this membership, you are going to get everything from live coaching sessions with me monthly, all of my best-selling heart work meditations and hypnosises. You're going to get all of my energy healing activations to do energy work on yourself anytime you want. Not to mention, as soon as you enroll, you get a library of 9 past masterclasses and 8 on-demand meditations. But the very best part is the people in the community. This is some of the most heart-centered, amazing humans I've ever come in contact with. Honestly, people have made friends in this group. They've met up in person in this group. It's the place to be. This is seriously the only space on the internet that weaves quantum manifestation, inner work, and business to help you quantum leap in your soul's growth and your business growth. If you're serious about healing, getting out of your own way, and taking massive action this year, then join with the link below. See you inside. And I feel like this is just a really important conversation because I have a lot of men that DM me that are scared to do inner work, that don't know where to start. And I think that there's not enough men that are willing to go here, right here where we are, and be vulnerable and talk about these harder subjects of what it feels like not to be confident and like what you did about it, because it's so clear that you've done so much work now. Like you have you have to when you have a business, right? It's like, it's a spiritual journey on steroids. Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about your relationship with yourself and how that's shifted.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting you say the little boy, because that's kind of this next evolution that I'm currently on, is realizing that a lot of the things that hold me back are really just my inner boy feeling stuck in this inner child work. Like I had heard that term thrown around probably from you and just like other spiritual people, but even just the past literally like 2 or 3 weeks, I actually started like doing this work.
Yeah.
And it's been so powerful where you actually like meet your trauma where it's at. And I actually haven't read this book, but we hear about it all the time. Like The Body Keeps the Score. You know, I feel like I've just like kind of lived that. I haven't actually read the book again, but like I feel like I've just like lived that. And now I'm realizing that that is so true. And like I think like for me, my whole spiritual journey really started like with talk therapy, and I think it had its purpose, but I hit a point where I was just like, I feel like I'm speaking my own misery into existence and just like reconfirming the life that I'm living. And so like the somatic work, right, of the body, like getting into the breath, into the body, like that's actually how you can start healing. There's such a misconstrued definition of like masculinity and like what it means to be a man in today's world.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah. And I think that biologically men are born with, you know, more testosterone, and they are protectors and they're providers. And like, that's something that I've been stepping into more, that I take a lot of pride in. And I think that's the way it should be. But I think also the world that we live in is so overstimulated for a man or a woman that our adrenaline is so high and our cortisol is so high all the time, that because we've created this image of like being a man means being super macho or super masculine or like sucking it up or like kind of faking it till you make it, that is actually more toxic. And I always argue that that actually makes you less manly, because that just means you're suppressing your emotions, and then your cortisol is going up and your adrenaline is going up. And cortisol is actually the antithesis to testosterone. So like when I was burnt out, my testosterone plummeted down to like 300. And then like a year later, after I kind of went through the awakening and started like getting vulnerable and like crying and like releasing my emotions, it went back up to like 850.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's just, it's interesting. I mean, not a lot of us are really taught what it means to be a man. And I think a lot of us are still trying to figure that out. I think there's too many men faking it out there. And I mean, the male suicide rate is 4 times higher than it is for women. And so for me, that just screams ego, ego, ego.
And it screams repression. What I really kind of wanted to say was like, also girls have spaces to express their emotions. Like we can talk to our mom, we can talk to other girls. Whereas I feel like it's probably 10 times harder for a boy to be going through that because it's not culturally normal for you to be like talking to your guy friends about how you're not confident about how you look.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a friend group of a lot of guys, and like sometimes even seeing how they handle conflict instead of like talking through it, it's just so different than how girls do. So is that something that you've experienced, that it's hard to talk about your feelings with your friends?
Yeah, it's funny. Like the more I've gone into this hell space, I've talked about this on a few other podcasts, but like I feel like I just tend to be like the only guy. Like there's, most health coaches are women. Every like breathwork class I go to is like 80% women, but like I don't really give a shit. Like I am just there to do things that make me feel good. And I think that a lot of men kind of put on this like power mask or this like feigned sense of like whatever it might be that they're trying to become, or like this like false identity. Yeah. And then they feel like, oh, like I'm not gonna like say this to my buddy because he's gonna think I'm weak or like I'm less than him. It's interesting. I mean, I feel like I have a handful of friends. One of my friends specifically, I'll call his name out, Mark. Like I've literally known him since I was 1 month old, and he was the guy I was with in Puerto Rico. And it's been like this full circle moment. There's actually a picture of us when we were like in the mud together at like 3 years old.
Wow.
And then, we're in Puerto Rico working remote. He just became the CEO of his like protein company. I'm obviously CEO of Superfood Superhuman. And it's just like this like full circle moment. So like he's one of the guys where I can just like really talk to him about anything, which is really special. But I think that's something that this world is lacking, is the ability for men to just like speak how they feel. And I'm really grateful for all those circles I've been in with like women in these breathwork classes, and like that's awesome. But something I'm learning too, it's actually really important for men to be held by other men. And like
by men.
Yeah, like feel masculine, being vulnerable in front of other men. And there's a mentor I started working with recently. He's really teaching me a lot about that, and it's really just kind of helping me step into like the warrior within me and the king within me, but also that like healthy balance of like feminine energy and like connecting to the feminine. I think when I was so burnt out at that point, because I was suppressing so much, I actually needed to connect deeper with the divine feminine, like with this like Mother Earth. And like I learned that rest is actually part of the work. And like I was just, my cortisol was so high, and I was suppressing for so long. But I think vulnerability has been the number one thing that's changed my life. To bring it full circle with your question, I actually started like a group chat with a couple of my high school friends. There's like a men's chat where we kind of talk about like, sexual health and just like, stuff that men go through. And it's still pretty new, but I started the chat, and it was like, I don't know, I just kind of felt this like call to do that. We're all going through shit that we just like don't talk about. So
yeah,
it was kind of just like a cool micro, ripple effect of all the stuff that I've learned, and just trying to, just the buddy I was with in Puerto Rico had a friend that took his own life, unfortunately. He was like our age recently. That stuff just like wakes you up immediately. You're just like, oh my God, I have to do this thing in my business, or like this person said this thing to me, or like I can't believe this person just cut me off and on the highway here. It's like, dude, that stuff is just like, all the stuff that we worry about really doesn't matter when that type of stuff comes in. And it's like, that's why death and pain can be actually such a good teacher. And when I was burnt out, I literally felt like I was dying. And then it was like, damn, your question before was like, do you ever like look in the mirror and be like, I'm not happy with the way I am or the way I look or how I feel? I was just like, that's where I was at. I was like, okay, Mike, clearly your ego's getting in the way, and what you're doing right now isn't working. You got to change.
And, something that I say that people don't necessarily like, but it's true, is that if you're not changing, you're not in enough pain. I say that to people all the time because that's how I live too. It's like sometimes I want something, but I don't want it bad enough because I'm not in enough pain. And I think that pain can be a beautiful thing because it does create that contrast of like something needs to change, and it needs to change right now. And I want to get out of this pain so bad that I'm going to make that change. Something also that I want to talk to you about too, because I know you are getting into Joe Dispenza's work, and something, I mean, literally my audience knows that I won't shut the fuck up about him. But one of the most beautiful gifts that it's given me is actually seeing what a man with an open heart, has. And so much of his work is basically opening your heart. And you actually can't enter a state of brain and heart coherence until you learn how to open your heart. And I remember really amazing moments at my first week-long advanced retreat where I'm on the beach and, you know, I've always dated guys that have had, I didn't know it at the time, but they were very repressed. Like they had very closed hearts. They didn't show any emotion. They were very, you know, they're just like this masculine guy. And, or I thought, I'm sitting on the beach and we're doing walking meditations and I see these men with their hands over their heart and like tears streaming down their face and like just crying of joy and gratitude. And for a second, I was caught off guard because I had never seen that. And then I started connecting with some of these men and I was like, I'm having the deepest connection with these men that I've had with even deeper than the connections that I've had back home with men that I've known my whole life. Like what's going on? And it was so beautiful for me to witness and realize like, wow, I think that my frame of masculinity has been skewed even from culture, and true masculinity, like you mentioned, is that vulnerability, is that open heart, and is that connection to their own heart that is actually going to create more safety within the feminine, right? Because if you're a feminine and you don't even feel like your partner can be emotionally attuned to you, like that doesn't feel safe. So I think that it's just so interesting how culture has framed masculinity when really the portal to it is through the heart.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I feel like that like expression, like, you know, opening up your heart sounds like this just like intangible, like, oh yeah, like more love, like open up your heart, but like it's like a real physical thing that you do.
Yeah.
And again, it's a skill.
Can be measured.
Yeah.
Exactly. It can literally be measured. And the heart is intelligent love. That means that there's information in it. And I think that that's the other thing that is so beautiful about the heart now that we're just talking about it is if you're not in touch with your heart, you're not in touch with your intuition. Your intuition is your connection to source. It's your connection to the divine. It's your connection to this higher power that knows exactly where you should go, right? So it's interesting, like your highest fulfillment is going to be able to come from you listening to your heart. You listening to your heart doesn't happen if you're not connected to your emotions, because unfortunately, you can try to logic your life until your face turns blue. And this is, you know, my work is helping people find their highest fulfillment. And I always tell them, fulfillment isn't logical. Like fulfillment is in your body. Fulfillment is feeling. And, you know, it's not going to make sense for you to quit that corporate job and start your own business. It's not going to make sense to put down thousands of dollars to a certification when you could spend the money on a trip. It's not going to make logical sense. And the moment you stop trying to make the things that feel good make sense, the moment you're going to be the most fulfilled.
Wow. That's really, really powerful, because I feel like fear is just the number one thing that stops people from doing what they want to do. And that's like, you know, our ego serves its purpose and it helps protect us. But yeah, when we let it take over too much, it can really be a detriment. And, you know, this is the thing, like so many people don't make time for white space, just like nothingness. And again, going back to like the pandemic and then like going from my corporate job to full-time entrepreneurship, like those are the times in my life where I was kind of just like forced to be in white space and be in like nothingness. And that's when the answers come in. And sometimes the answers are really hard to hear and the truth is really hard to hear. And, you know, I realized that I didn't actually have depression. I didn't have anxiety. I didn't have procrastination or ADHD. I just had a misalignment in my life, and that like the way I was doing things needed to change. But if I kept scrolling on my phone, or if I kept, you know, just going to the gym or like staying busy, like I wouldn't be able to listen to what my body and my mind and my soul and my spirit was trying to tell me. And I think that like when we're so overstimulated in this world,
and we're always overstimulated,
right, we become very disconnected from our heart and our gut. And like when I was burnt out, I literally, like that's what I was saying to the mentor at the time before I hired him. I was like, I feel like I like lost my intuition. Like I couldn't make any grounded decisions. I didn't know what to do. I like felt like a lost puppy. And it was because I was not grounded with myself. And I was just worried and like literally chronically living in a state of fear, which is not where any healing can ever happen, as you know from Joe Dispenza's work. And so I don't know, it's just interesting. Like faith and fear are both uncertain, and we just get to choose which one we want to believe in.
quick interruption to this episode because I have to tell you something. And what I have to tell you is I'm literally freaking obsessed with doing energy work. This has been one of my favorite modalities that I've added to my spiritual toolbox to shift my energy really freaking quickly. And as you guys have learned in Alignment Academy, this is a vibrational based universe, meaning as your energy shifts, the reflections in your life also shift. People that you're attracting, the experiences that you're attracting, the money you make, literally everything shifts. In Alignment Academy, my membership, part of it is that there are guided energy works added to the portal every single month. And I really want you to be able to experience this energy work because, guys, it literally works so quick. Your reality shifts so quick. The testimonials have been insane inside of Alignment Academy. So because you're a listener of Alignment Academy, I'm offering you a free guided energy work session in exchange for rating and reviewing the podcast. All you have to do is follow my podcast Instagram at Alignment Academy Pod on Instagram. And then after you've rated and reviewed the podcast, just screenshot it, send me a DM on Alignment Academy Pod, and I'll send you the link to download your free guided energy work. During this energy healing session, we're going to be working on your confidence and your self-love. When you are filled with your own confidence and your own self-love, you are magnetic as fuck to the rest of the world. Magnetism is created when we are so filled up with love for ourselves. It's also created when we just really fuck with ourselves super hard. Like, think about really magnetic people. They're not asking other people to like them or validate them. They're just like, I really fuck with me. And if you want to too, then yay. And if not, then it's all good. I can't wait for you to try this energy healing. Please DM me and let me know how it goes. And now let's get back to the episode. Where do you create white space in your life now? Like, what does that look like for someone who's like, yeah, Mike, that sounds great, but like, I'm busy, I have a job, blah, 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 blah. Like, where can we create that space? Because even me who makes my own freaking schedule, like, I feel like I have trouble creating intentional time, like without my phone, without stimulation. And I've actually been doing this thing now where like I wake up really early and I have a lot of downtime. But for someone who's really busy, what are some easy ways that they can just create a little bit more space to listen? And also, I kind of want to speak to the fact that it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. Like, you're going to feel boredom. You're going to feel like, okay, I just want to like pick something up, but you kind of got to just sit there.
The first thing I'll say is that even when it doesn't feel like it, nobody can tell you what to do. And I feel like sometimes that's one of the biggest blessings and also sometimes the biggest curse, because your boss told you have to be at this meeting at 2:00, or your friend said that we're doing this dinner, so you got to be there at this time, or whatever the case is. It's like, oh, well, I have to do this and I have to be at this meeting because this is my job and this is what pays me. But like, when you care about something, like, you will make time for it and you will do it. And the problem is, if you're living in fear or living on somebody else's schedule, or you don't have your own path or your own plan, you're living on somebody else's plan. And so just to like feel that power of like self-care, and this is something I say to my clients all the time, like, self-care is not selfish. It's actually the exact opposite. When you're literally just like outsourcing your power and your worth to like other people, or like you literally try to fill your own cup up by like helping others, which is great. But if that's coming from a place of like desperation and because it's going to make you feel good, like literally the best way to make someone else feel good is to make yourself feel good. And then you naturally, organically want to give it to others. So one of the best things to like practice self-care is just to like commit to something and do it and like build that confidence from it. Even if it's literally 5 minutes between your meetings and just putting your feet in the grass and just like looking up at the sun and taking a breath in through your nostrils and out through your mouth. Like, literally just starting with something that small and then just like start to compound that and just like feel the power of self-care and feel the power of like taking care of you.
I love how your spiritual journey has kind of evolved so much over the last, I guess, 5 years of, you know, it really started physically, and I feel like it's just gotten deeper and deeper, and you're like down the rabbit hole now of like, it's getting spiritual and emotional, and you're getting more in touch, and now you're in a men's group and all of these things. And that's kind of how it goes, right? You have a pretty extreme lifestyle now. I mean, you don't drink alcohol, you don't eat processed foods, you do a lot of things that are just against the status quo. You know, you go to bed early, you make your own schedule. I mean, you even make content on Instagram, like just a lot of things that most people aren't doing. number one, my first question about this is, did you ever struggle with being different and like fear of judgment and what are my friends from home gonna think?
Yeah, 1,000%. It's like, it's funny because like processed food and alcohol are the two drugs that we have to justify why we don't want to do that. Yeah, I mean, I've always been an athlete, and I feel like athletes and like entrepreneurs and ambitious people and people that like to learn and people who are curious, like they just know there's like something more out there for them. Like they can't put a finger on it, but you know that it's the intuition. Yeah, it's this soul trying to like speak through you. And I guess I kind of like always felt that way. Like I was always the dude in high school where like my friends were, I don't know, going and watching a TV show or doing something. And I'm just like literally practicing basketball till like 12, like midnight, like every single day because I wanted to like get better and get better. And, you know, that's how it goes as athletes and entrepreneurs and stuff. Like we just, sometimes perfectionism comes in, sometimes we over optimize, but
yeah, we're
it's like just like one of the biggest, I don't know, I guess desires of being a human is just like growth. I hit a certain point where it's like, okay, like I'm not growing. I'm just like sitting in this corporate job and I'm like making six figures and it's cool. But like, I don't want to go to those happy hours. I don't want to have this small talk about stuff I don't really care about. I don't want to go to this bar and sit outside in the freezing cold in Boston, Massachusetts for 45 minutes just to get into the bar and then pay $20 to get in and then wait 45 minutes in line to get a $20 beer that I don't actually want. And then have more surface level conversations about my emotions. And I was just like, dude, I came to a point where I was like looking down at the beer bottle. I was like, is this really my life? Like screw this. I got to do something different. And, you know, Joe Dispenza work, like the biggest and best thing you can do is just switch up your environment. You know, I think especially when I started to like lessen my drinking, yeah, you get all the typical things of like, oh, dude, like you're such a pussy or like, why are you not drinking? You're so lame. Like, oh my God. But I think that's really just people projecting their own insecurities onto you. I don't think I know that that's the truth. And then it comes to a point where you just keep stepping into that confidence and you're just like that skill again of like not giving a shit. Like the art of not giving a shit is actually a skill. It's one of the best skills you can attain. And then you build your own confidence and then they start to be like, oh, wow, okay, like, damn, like I wish I could do that. So yeah, you get that resistance, but I think when you change your relationship with resistance, that's where the beauty comes in because that means you're changing.
It creates confidence too when you can be in a group of people that are all drinking and just being like, I don't want to. Like I remember so many moments where I had to do that where it is really hard when all your friends are drinking. And for me, it was when I was building my business. I'm like, I can't afford a hangover in the morning.
Exactly.
Like I literally need to be working from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow night. And like, it's a Saturday, but that is my biggest priority. And yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's a perfect example. I remember specifically, I was living downtown in the East Village in San Diego. And like when I first started my business, I'm super grateful for the pandemic because it was like, there's nothing else to do except like work on me and work on my business. And all the bars were shut down. I was like, oh, what a bummer that is. Like, you know,
I felt
so it was nice. It was like a cop out to be like, oh, well, like I didn't want to go to the bars anyway. So thanks for shutting down. And it was the same thing. I wake up at like 7 a.m. on a Saturday and just work all day, like make all this like amazing content. I just hired a business coach. I'm like, I know what to do. I'm fired up. And so like, I can't be sitting here hungover. Like that doesn't even make sense. And so this is like the intangible stuff that matters so much is like your vision and like why do you want to be healthy? And why does it matter to you? And why do you want to show up better for yourself? And so that you're not preoccupied about, you know, thinking about how your stomach hurts you all the time or like you keep having these afternoon energy crashes or like, you're not there. Like you're with people, but you're not actually in the present moment. You're just thinking about your own shit that's going on and you can't like give your best self to others. It becomes so much easier when you have a clear and crisp vision of who you want to be, what you imagine that to be. And then you're just like, okay, well, I want to be really healthy. I want to be happy. I want to have more energy. I want to feel good. I want to show up better for other people. So obviously I'm not going to have alcohol, which is straight up poison. That doesn't align with my lifestyle. Obviously, I'm not going to have this bag of Sun Chips because that's chemicals and that's inflammation and that doesn't make me feel good and that doesn't give me energy and I can't show up better. So like, honestly, at this point, like giving up alcohol was like kind of easy. I mean, it wasn't easy in a sense of like, I just did it, but it was like 3 to 5 years where I was just becoming this new person.
It's a lot of ego shedding. It's a lot of like disidentifying your identity and like re-identifying with someone else.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there is a version of you that did identify with that, but it's like, okay, I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like 3 to 5 years of me like starting to like stop drinking. And then it was really like 2 years where I was like, okay, maybe like we go to a winery with my family or like it's someone's birthday, I'll have like one beer or something. And then, yeah, just had a couple like mini epiphanies where I was just like, one time I woke up with like crazy heartburn, which I never get. And I got like 1 hour of sleep and I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm never drinking again. And then there was something recently. I was at a bachelor party and I just like saw some things and just like kind of had this like, it was almost as if like the world like slowed down for a second.
Like a soul moment.
Yeah. I was like sitting at this club and I was like, I don't want to be here. Someone literally put like a vodka in my hand that I didn't want. And I was like, screw it. Like, I'll just like have a sip. I kind of got a little buzzed. I was like, I don't like how I feel when I'm buzzed like this. And I'm like looking around the club. I'm like, holy crap. We got 20-year-old dudes. We got 40-year-old dudes. We got 60-year-old dudes who are literally just obliterating their own body because they don't know how to handle their emotion and they don't actually deep down enjoy their life. Otherwise, they wouldn't be numbing out with this poison that makes them feel different. Because that's why people drink, is because, oh, I like the buzz. I just like to have a drink every once in a while, which like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, why? It's not like, oh, should I have it or shouldn't I have it? Or should I have the cookie or should I not? It's like, why do I want it? That's the real question.
So you're inviting people to look deeper at the root of like why you're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the truth is that it's hard to go against the status quo though. Like genuinely, it's hard to be in a life where all your friends go out every weekend. And I've been in that life. Like it was a slow burn. And I almost want to just speak to this because I think that now you're at a place where you're like, it's easy. I don't really care. Like you're kind of like, are so disidentified with the person that was drinking alcohol. But to a lot of people, they're not there yet. Right. And I've actually never reflected publicly on my alcohol journey. I've barely drank now for 5 to 7 years. Like I've had drinks and I'm not actually against alcohol. I think there's a time and place for everything. There's seasons for everything. I don't even remember the last time I had a drink, but I'm not like hard, I'll never have a sip of alcohol again. However, I think that there's a big part of me that understands that my highest timeline doesn't involve alcohol. I want to just highlight the part of everyone's journey where you are going to have to go through an uncomfortable season where you used to go out every weekend and now you need to find other things to do every weekend. You used to hang out with these friends every weekend and now you're probably not going to hang out with those friends every weekend. And that feels like a crumbling of a life. That feels like a lot of ego shedding. It feels like a crumbling of a life. And to your point, I think what's really helpful to do that is to have that vision of why I'm not doing it. And also putting your energy into building the new life, like the new characters in your life, the new things that you do. Was that hard for you? Like to make friends that didn't drink? And
I think that's one of the biggest fears that people have when it comes to becoming healthy is that like, I feel like I'm going to miss out on fun. I feel like I'm going to lose all my friends. And I think the realization that people have to have is that the things that they think give them joy don't really, and they don't actually serve your highest purpose. And that doesn't mean you have to like excommunicate people from your life, or you can never go and have a drink, or you can never like go to anything fun. I mean, I've been to, I don't know, probably almost like 10 weddings at this point where I'm just dead ass sober and I'm like the dude on the dance floor that's dancing more than anybody else because I'm just comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like that's a huge fear for a lot of people. They just think that like their whole life is going to change. And, you know, if you want the highest version of yourself, you got to do the things that the highest version of yourself would do.
And those are uncomfortable sometimes.
And again, the ego loves to cling. So like clinging on to the old people or the old habits is just normal because that's what the nervous system does. But you have to realize, like, I actually had a client that I enrolled like a couple months ago said this quote to me. I might botch it, but he was just like, yeah, I realized like the friends I had and this train that I was on, that was like the tracks were built by these friends that I have, were actually putting me on the wrong path. And so he's like, I had to build like a different railroad.
I used to say something like that when I was quitting my corporate job. You know, people would ask me, my mom would ask me like, why, Kristen, you work at Under Armour, you're so successful. Like, why do you want to quit and be a yoga teacher at the time? And I was like, Mom, I'm climbing this ladder and it's leaning against the wrong building. Like, I don't want to be on that building. I don't want to have the job that my boss has. I don't want any job there. I hate it all. And like, I worked at such a good company with such amazing people. I got to wear workout clothes every week. I got 50% off of all Under Armour. Like, it was dope, you know? And I was still so unhappy. And I think that those are the moments where you have to really look at your life and be like, am I just doing this because was put on the path, or is this really what I want? And another sobering moment I had in the journey was realizing, like, I remember I was sitting at a cube and I was still my little spiritual self. Like, I had like crystals and my tarot cards like in my little cube, and people would like come pick them. And I was so miserable one day, and I would count down the days from Monday to Friday every single week. And I was like, oh my fucking God, no one cares if I rot here for the rest of the 48 years I have to work. Like, no one actually cares if I stay here. If I want to do something else with my life, I am the only one that can do it. And of course, my mom wants the best for me. My sisters want the best for me. My partner wants the best for me. All of that. They want the best for you. But at the end of the day, you are the only one that can change your fucking life.
Yeah, exactly. That's so powerful. I actually had this like little mini download today as I was getting in the car. It was like, most people just wait. They wait for things. They wait 40 years to retire to finally do what they love, to hopefully maybe have 15 to 20 years to do that and be healthy enough to do that. Or, oh yeah, like I'll wait to do this program and then maybe a couple months when I'm ready. Or, oh yeah, like maybe I'll sign up for this half marathon, like
ready
a
is the
couple weeks.
decision.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really powerful. Like, you have to have those little like what the hell moments. That's why I'm saying, like, I feel like sometimes being in the status quo and like being like okay, like not really happy, but like you can put up with it, is almost like worse than just like being in the muck, because like it can really kind of propel you. But yeah, one thing I wanted to tie back with the other question is just like, I feel like that's a big part of my mission, honestly, is teaching people that you can be healthy and have fun and not feel restricted and not feel like, yeah, your life is going to be over, or that like you have to choose either fun or health. I think I'm trying to teach people that like there's a synchronicity and like a connection between having fun and being healthy, and that like life can actually be more fun when you're healthy. And
I agree, because you're more in touch with your emotions.
Yeah. You're
more connected.
And I've never been happier in my life. I'm still like figuring out a lot, and obviously I do my best to always be as vulnerable as I can and just be authentic and genuine, just because I don't really know how else to do it. I'm not a good liar. I don't know. I think there's just like a facade out there that you can't like have fun if you're healthy. But it's like, what I've realized is that I'm actually way happier because I am healthy.
You mentioned that you're still connected to like some of your high school friends and just some old friends. How do you lovingly, even though maybe you don't agree with their lifestyle, I'm sure that they drink, they eat processed food, and you're pretty open online about the fact that you don't do those things, and you also don't recommend doing those things. How do you, and I'm actually trying to bring this back for my audience about like, a lot of the questions are, how do I get my partner to heal? Like, how do I help my partner be more healthy? Or like, how do I help my friends get on the spiritual journey? How do you operate in relationship when you see so clearly people you love, maybe family, friends, are doing things that you don't resonate with, but how do you love them from afar? Or what's your process?
That's a really powerful question. I appreciate you asking it. I think one thing I also realized when I burned out was that I was actually so obsessed, I guess, with fixing myself that I was like busy trying to fix other people instead of like going within and really like doing the soul work that it requires to fix myself, which I don't even really like to use that term because that implies we're broken, which we're not. But I spent a lot of energy and wasted a ton of time and a ton of energy trying to like heal other people and like wish that they were living my life. And I mean, obviously the reason I share, and as humans we're wired to share and be in community with other people, but I think I was like kind of approaching it the wrong way, where it was like, okay, like you should do this or you shouldn't do that. And I don't know, now I'm at a point where I'm just like, I hope the best for everybody. And I know what this transformation has done with me or for me. And it's not that like I'm doing these things because I'm like cooler or I'm hip or like I'm this like holistic guy. It's like I'm just literally doing what makes me happy. And if you also resonate with that, cool. But I'm not going to sit here and say you have to do this or you can't do that, or like you have to be doing what I'm doing because this is the only way to live life. I don't know. I think that a lot of people, like the willingness is a huge part of it. And sometimes that willingness doesn't really come until you're like in a point of pain or you have this inciting incident that like makes you want to be willing. Because I don't think anybody wants to be unhealthy. That doesn't even make sense. Like nobody wants to feel like crap, but
sometimes they just don't even have the information.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, there was one year for Christmas, actually, I bought my parents like a ton of like health products and equipment when I like first started becoming a coach, before I kind of did the emotional regulation stuff. And I realized I was basically just projecting onto them. I bought them this like fancy water filter and this like grounding mat, and like they didn't use any of it. I spent like thousands of dollars. They didn't use any of it. And then now I look back at it and I'm like, damn, okay, I kind of realized what I was doing. But no, I absolutely still love all of my high school friends and my family. And I think like, you know, sometimes we can get triggered around those people because, you know, things come up and it's family and friends. It's just kind of how it goes. But something I've shifted into more recently is just like choosing the love. And like, even when something triggers me or hurts me, or like maybe they're projecting their fear onto me, that makes me uncomfortable, I kind of just like breathe through it. I'm just like I know this is like all coming from a place of love. You know, most people are indoctrined and programmed to literally live out of fear. Mm-hmm. So that's how it comes across. And that's why maybe it can trigger me, because it feels like an old version of myself. But I've just kind of come to a point now where I just like choose love. I choose to see the love in literally everybody. And whether my mom says something that triggers me or my dad says something that triggers me or whoever, it's just like, okay, like all there is on this planet is just love. And there's no such thing as hate. It's just either a certain amount of love or a lack of love. And so that's been profound for me recently, just like seeing past all that stuff and just like being so grateful for my family and my friends, and just like literally choosing love.
Choosing to like know that they're on the exact soul path that they're meant to be on. And if it leads to somewhere close to you, then amazing. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that that's a huge lesson on everyone's spiritual journey, because I think when you start to change your life and you see so many benefits from what you're doing, your automatic response is just wanting to share it and almost wanting everyone else to do it, because you're like, you have to do it. Like, look at me. Oh my God, I'm so happy. But then I think that the more mature you get on the journey, you realize like this is such a personal journey. This is not something that you can put on someone. Changing your health or changing your mindset or doing inner child healing, like I teach, it's like doing energy work. You just have to opt into it yourself. You know what I mean? It's not something that is I can give to you. And I think that once you realize that no matter where people are, they're on the perfect path for them. And something that I love to remind myself is that all the paths lead back to love. They'll get there eventually. I don't know if it's going to be in this lifetime. I don't know if it's going to be the next lifetime. They're going to get exactly where they need to be. I don't know when, but I'm just going to hold the pose of my higher self. And I've actually seen the most transformation in the people and the friends and family around me, you know, years later. Like I've been on this path, I've been on my spiritual journey since I was 17, and I've been an entrepreneur for 5, almost 6 years now. And it's so funny, the people that really are paying attention when you don't think that they are.
Yeah.
Like my best friend from like 10 years ago just called me the other day and was like, Kristen, your content is starting to trigger me. I know I need to do something else with my life. And like, she was my friend before I even had this business, you know? And it's like, it's just funny that you sometimes you don't think people are listening. And I'm so glad I never pushed anything on her, because I honestly haven't even had time to push anything on my family. I'm like, I have enough clients to work with. But it's just funny that you just being in your essence and doing you is inspiring, even when you don't think it is.
Yeah.
It's impacting people even when you don't think it is.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because especially when it comes to like content and Instagram, you're like, you try not to get caught up in the vanity metrics and stuff, but you're like, damn, like I just put like a couple hours in this post and like feel like nobody's paying attention. But like I feel like the people that are actually paying attention the most are the ones that aren't liking or they're not commenting, because they're like scared to like even give you any inclination of like, oh wow, I actually do resonate with what you're saying. And like that truth kind of hurts, but like I'm not gonna like maybe admit that. So that's such a good point.
And that's such a big and different conversation, because I think that as entrepreneurs, there's so many triggers in just the game of like social media, right? Like the likes. And it's funny. I was actually looking at some of my metrics yesterday on some posts that I was like, this is interesting. There's more saves than likes. And there was like hundreds of likes, and there was more saves than likes. And I'm like, that just goes to show how many people want this, but are just not like,
vulnerabilities.
We want this external validation, but the entire process of inner child work is the internal validation over the external. And I think it's so valuable for entrepreneurship, because at some point you have to realize, like, I got to kind of just do this regardless of if I have enough likes or not. Like, I have to just do this regardless if I have enough followers. Like, it just doesn't matter. It's a game at the end of the day for you.
Yeah, I know. I kind of like see my Instagram as like my own digital journal that other people just have the benefit of seeing. The other thing I just wanted to say, when you talk about just like kind of being in your essence, I think that's so powerful. I think there's like so many things that are like invisible in this world that like people like believe in, but then there's other things that are invisible that people don't, right? Like, say for like example, like cancer. Like obviously like cancer can come out of nowhere. You don't really necessarily feel it or see it, but it's a thing. Or like, I don't know, what are some other examples? Like, okay, maybe there's a shark somewhere in this water. I can't see it, but there's a shark there. But then when it comes to like energy or like, emotional intelligence or law of attraction or like magnetism, people are like, oh, that's so voodoo, or like that's hipster, like that's not actually real. But like, so when you open your heart, you're like, well, I'm like literally, I am Joe Dispenza. So like, it's so proven. But no, it's like, I don't know. That's why it's just so funny. It's like the weird stuff works. That's what I always say to my clients. And it's chalked up as weird. And I don't know, like as I've gone from corporate to entrepreneurship, obviously I'm helping people with their nutrition and their health, but I've realized a lot of it is just like helping people awaken to like what's actually going on and how it's like all interconnected. And now like, 5 years ago, I don't like all the stuff I'm talking about now. I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? But it's so real, and like it's hard not to talk about it because it has such a profound impact on my life.
Yeah. And, I think that's something that really helped me. And I'd be curious if you had any of these people in your life, is you got to find the people, even if it's just from a podcast or something, that are doing the weird shit that you're doing and can just shine that light for you. Even when we were talking about the alcohol and how you don't drink, and I love that. People were coming to mind was like Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, Chris Williamson. He has a podcast too. I can't remember the name of it, but it's massive. And like they openly talk about how they don't drink. And like when you really study the most successful people, they're not doing what the status quo is doing. They are doing the weird shit. They are, even, at the Joe Dispenza retreat I just went to, you're just like casually sitting next to a millionaire, a billionaire, and you're like, all the people at the top know what's up.
Yeah.
And when you really take time to study those people, put yourself in rooms with those people, you realize that your greatest success, your best self, is going to be going against the status quo. And you're going to look weird to your regular people, but that's the path.
Yeah. And it's really easy to like get pounded by that and like start to have that self-doubt, because you realize you're basically just taking on the projections of other people, or like the fear that they're projecting onto you. And then you start to literally believe their limiting beliefs, and then become your own limiting beliefs. So if like you just like have that soul moment, you have that intuitive, like, I just like know this is my path. Like you have to, it's almost like wearing this like shield of armor, and just like letting those like negative thoughts just bounce off you, because you are going to feel that. And that's what you grew up with. So of course, like those thoughts are going to come from other people, but that's what you have to realize, that you are changing, and you need to change if you want your life to change. And one of my favorite books, I say it's probably my favorite book of all time, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Oh, I've never read that.
My favorite quote, he goes, figure out what 95% of the world does and do the exact opposite.
Wow. What would you say to a guy listening to this that is wanting to go against the status quo, that is, wanting to open his heart, maybe be more emotional, is definitely coming up against a wall and just kind of like needs a guiding light right now? I really feel deeply in my heart right now that seeing someone like you, who looks normal, is young, was a sports guy, and now you have your own business. You live exactly where you want to live. You're living a very unconventional life, which shouldn't be, but it is to this day and age, but you're really happy. I feel like guys need to see that, right? And so if you have like a message for men that are wanting to like walk this path more deeply, what would you say to them?
Be a man and step through the fear. That's what it means to be a man, is to not like try to feign this picture of success, whether it's having this Lamborghini or having this like massive house, which is honestly all a byproduct of like being yourself, and being a man is stepping your intuition and not trying to like fit in with the other guys, but like really just be yourself and realize that like fitting in is actually the exact path to mediocrity. So I don't know, I guess the meta lesson here is like, if you want to be a man, like step through the fear and do what you're put on this earth to do. And sometimes people don't know what that is because they don't listen, they don't sit in silence, they don't actually know what their purpose is. So I always say, like, you don't have a vitamin deficiency, you have a purpose deficiency. So my number one action item for men out there would just be to sit in silence, even if it hurts, and just observe what comes up and listen to that without fear, and just do one thing that's going to move you closer to that mission and that vision. And for me, when I got introduced to a nutrition certification course, I was like, damn, I love nutrition. So curious about it, but I've never actually taken a step to like actually maybe legitimize this and like do something with it. And then as soon as I did that, my whole life changed.
I love that. I know we didn't really touch on what you actually do, so let's talk about Superfood Superhuman. If people want to connect with you, if they want to work with you, tell us a little bit about your business, what you do, and yeah, give us all the deets.
Yeah, it's funny, as you evolve, like it almost becomes more difficult to describe what you do because it's like such a big spiritual path and awakening. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, just teaching people holistically what it means to take care of their body, listen to their intuition, listen to their body, and become happy and healthy and have more energy without feeling restricted or overwhelmed. And I've worked with over 85 clients at this point over 3 years. And I think what I've realized is that a lot of like athletes and entrepreneurs and ambitious people, like they want more for themselves and they know that they can be a better expression. And then they like make these decisions that don't actually align with who they know they can be, or like they're just like falling into peer pressure, like eating the food just because it was there, or having alcohol just because someone gave them the beer. But it's like, what do you actually want? And I feel like that's really ultimately what I teach people, is like how to tune into what they actually want by listening to their body, and honestly really healing their relationship with food and creating a community. So I just realized that most people are inconsistent when it comes to their nutrition, and obviously there's a lot more depth to that, and I think ultimately it just kind of comes down to your relationship with food. But I basically created an online course and community where people can learn the fundamentals of what it takes to be a healthy human in the year 2025, which is an environment in a world that we've never lived in before. Giving people the toolbox to have the right mindset, understand about their sleep health and how that impacts their life, how their food choices, and just like really how to nourish their body at a high level. And like a lot of people are taught calories, they're taught all these like surface level things that can be helpful. But if you want to like make nutrition something that's ingrained into your life and make it second nature, you don't have to think about it and just becomes a part of who you are, and the byproduct is like being healthier and happier and having more energy, then reach out and we can have a chat, because I'd be happy to help.
Amazing. And I'll have everything linked below if you guys want to connect with Mike and learn about more of his coaching and stuff. But thank you so much. This was such a good convo.
So much fun. Yeah.
So
appreciate
you got it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Super grateful.
Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. I will see you next week. Have a great week. Bye.